Hi everyone, we're going to be going through 63 project management tools that you absolutely must know to have success in your project and on your project management exams. How many of these tools do you know already? The best part about this is we'll be using them in an example project with a business called Pet Buddy, where Samantha is the business owner who wants to create the Uber for pet sitters. She'll be working with the project team to uncover her requirements and deliver her product to the marketplace. We're going to be going over these project tools in our project from start to finish, from initiation through to scope, schedule, budget, quality, and risk. And as we kick off our project, we'll be going over the tools to initiate our project while also gathering our stakeholders at the same time. Let's get into the first two initiation tools, starting with our project business case. Now, with our business case, remember, it's a feasibility study. Is it worthwhile doing this project in the first place? So we usually run through a summary, the current issue or the problem that we're trying to address, and then any solutions that we're going to address them with, which is going to be our project. And then lastly, a recommendation. This is our business case to see if we're kicking off the project in the first place. And if our business case tells us it's a good idea to do the project, we can initiate the project with our project charter. In this case, Samantha, remember our business owner, will start putting this together, and she may do this with the project manager. In this case, it's going to be Billy. Billy and Samantha will get together, put this together, and then Samantha will approve those resources by signing off on the project charter. She'll sign off on the funding and on the people needed, and that way our project can start, it can initiate. So just quickly, here's a good look at our project. Got a nice project background and a description, high-level details, start and finish. Who's the project manager? Who's the project sponsor? What's the project name? What are the project details? Why did we start it? The benefit to cost ratio there is looking pretty good. The key requirements, so high-level requirements we've got there. These are our initial features that we've put together. What are the expected benefits? Increased revenue and increased revenue through the mobile application. And for our customers, they can get trusted, reviewed pet sitters, and pet sitters get an easy way to start a side hustle or start a new business or get new business. So the estimated cost is $800,000 for our full development team. Estimated milestones we've got in there as well. So all of this is just high level stuff. So it's a really good way to see at a glance what our project is proposed to look like. Here are our milestones, feature 1 through 7. Here's the project team and the stakeholders in the business who are going to be impacted. Any high-level risks that we have seen, and how do we know when the project is complete? We've got a first working version of the Pet Buddy mobile app released to the mobile store. And that is our project charter. As we go about initiating our project, we're going to need to find all of the stakeholders we need to work with and how we're going to work with them using these 6 stakeholder management tools. And the first one we're going to use is our organizational breakdown structure, or just an organizational chart, sometimes it's called. This is from the business, from the Pet Buddy business. And as you can see, we've got Samantha, who's the business owner, at the top here. Now, the reason why we use this is so we can figure out all of the stakeholders and find those stakeholders within the business that we're working. So we've got customer service manager, marketing managers, operations managers, and IT support. Whenever we're starting a new project, we always want to check the organizational chart just so we know we're engaging the right stakeholders and finding the right stakeholders. Now, when we've got the stakeholders that we need and we're forming a project team, we're going to use a resource breakdown structure, or RBS. So these are the resources within our project. Or it could be a project organizational chart, we could call it as well. So again, Samantha is going to be our project sponsor. She's the business owner. But now we have our project team with Billy, our project manager, our business analysts, and our developers, and our testers who are going to help create this Pet Buddy mobile app. You could also do this in a spreadsheet if you wanted, but this is just a nice way to see it all decomposed in a proper breakdown structure. Once we've captured all the people that we want to work with, and even the people in our project team, we're going to put everyone we need in our stakeholder register. And we're going to do this. If you get questions when you're taking your PMP exam, always we can find stakeholders in the stakeholder register, and we always want to update the stakeholder register if we get new stakeholders too. So we put their name, their role, and then the responsibility. For example, the owner Samantha is going to be our project sponsor, providing the resources, the funding, and helps remove any escalated issues that we can't remove ourselves. Then we've got people in operations and marketing, and we can put the details for how they're going to help us on the project. So do they have a responsibility on the project or not? Let's put that here. We can also put their stakeholder influence and impact. So do they have an influence over the project? And is our project having a high impact on their area or on their daily work? So usually we rate these from 1 to 10. There's a few different ways to classify your stakeholders, but impact and influence is my favorite. And this is how it looks if we were putting that together on a stakeholder matrix or a stakeholder map. So as you can see, Samantha again is our business owner or our project sponsor. So the impact is quite high of the change, but also her level of influence is extremely high because she controls the resources and the funding. So we really want to collaborate with Samantha. If it's a high level of influence but a low impact from the project, then we can just maintain communication. If it's a high impact, like our front level staff here who are looking after the pets, but they may not have a high influence over our project, then we're going to impact them quite a lot. We need to keep them informed over here. And if it's low influence and low impact, then we just need to monitor them as they go along and as the project goes along. That's our stakeholder map. Now, there is another way to do it, and that's our Salience Chart. That just ranks people by their power, their legitimacy, and the urgency of us getting the information to them. So again, if it has all three, they are a definitive stakeholder that we really need to engage a lot. But legitimacy, so how legitimate is their involvement in our project, and how much power do they have over the project, and how urgent is it that we get that information to them again? So a lot of different areas we can put. This is also called a 3D chart because there's 3 areas, or a cube matrix. But you can show it as a Venn diagram here, which is another way. That is our Salience Chart. Now, the last one, as we're going along on our project, we're going to need to figure out how engaged our stakeholders are. And what we've got here is C for the current state of engagement and D for their desired state of engagement. And what we do with our stakeholder engagement matrix, we have unaware, resistant, neutral, supportive, and leading. Ideally, we want our team members to be supportive or leading, unless they're not really involved in the project, and then they can just be neutral. But let's say Sophie over here in marketing is unaware currently of our project at all. But we actually need her to be leading the project because we need her marketing input and we need her help with marketing the app once it's created. Same with Lucas. He, from operations, he is currently neutral, but we really need him to be supportive. And Samantha is supportive. She's doing okay, but we need her to be leading the charge. So when this happens, we just want to engage more, communicate more, make sure we're getting the right information and also providing the right information to these stakeholders to improve that engagement. And those are all the stakeholder tools that you're going to come across in the PMBOK guide, as we've shown on our Pet Buddy journey. Now, there are still 7 other project initiation tools we can use in the early stages of our project to make sure we're on track. And we can start with a tool like benchmarking to compare other businesses to ourselves and find the best practices out there in the market. We've got our Pet Buddy mobile app and the potential features here, and we're going to rate them. Do we have them, or do our competitors have them? As we go through these, and if we develop all of these features, Pet Buddy will stand out amongst our competitors who don't have all of these features just yet. So that's benchmarking against our competitors and where we might be able to improve. We can also rate and comment on those features. So if we had all of our other competitors down the left here, then we could rate our features versus our competitors' features and give an honest feedback on where we might be able to improve. Now that we've looked at the market and what's out there, we also want to do a make or buy analysis. Is it better for us to make it in-house, or is it better for us to buy it from a vendor? So what we're going to do is, here is our costs to make. We've got some costs here with developers, business integration, our senior user cost, project management team, or project manager and payment systems. And so altogether, $800,000 is the initial cost, and then ongoing $350,000 a year. Now, as we can see this in a beautiful little chart here, the cost to buy is down here. So it's a little bit less, $600,000 a year to buy it from a vendor and just white label this application. But over time, the costs are still high. So over time, as you can see, it becomes more viable for us to have this in-house by the second year, and that gap is only going to get bigger. So for that purpose, we can see that the most effective option is for us to make it in-house at this stage, and that's our make or buy analysis. Now we're also going to need to do our cost-benefit analysis. Is the benefit from this project going to be enough to justify the cost? For our project Pet Buddy, we've separated the costs and benefits over into year-by-year analysis here. In the first year, it's going to cost the project $800,000, and then less every year after that. But the benefits, the first year there are not many benefits, but over time, we get more and more benefits from mobile app revenue and increased location revenue at the Pet Buddy location. So now our cost to benefit analysis looks like this. At first, it's not worthwhile, but by the time we get to the second year and third year, our benefits outweigh the costs, giving us a 1 to 2.6 cost to benefit ratio and making the project worthwhile. Now, a project charter isn't the only tool we'll use to initiate a project. If we're working in a startup situation, or even if you're not, you might use a business model canvas. A business model canvas asks all these questions on one page about our potential product to make sure we're on the right track. We're going to ask things like, who is our customer? And who is our customer segment? What is the value proposition we're bringing to that customer? What are the key activities we're going to do to bring that value to the customer? Who are the key partners we're going to need, or the key resources we're going to need, and what channels are we delivering that value through? And lastly, the cost structure. For example, is it subscription model or one-off payments, or is it a service, or is it a product? And revenue streams, what are the different revenue streams bringing money in from this particular product? All of this combines to a wonderful way to see our project on a page. And it's very similar when we're looking at the Lean Canvas business plan. This is a modified version of the business model canvas, but more with a lean startup or a Toyota production system idea behind it. And here we're asking things like, who is our customer to start with, but what is our unfair advantage? What is something that cannot be copied or easily bought? So it's the moat around our product to keep us safe from competitors. What's our customer problem, and how are we solving that with our solution and unique value that we're bringing to the marketplace? And this is where our high-level concept comes into it also. For example, the YouTube is like Flickr for videos, and Flickr is not even really that much around anymore, but back then that's what they used to describe YouTube. And for us, we are the Uber of pet sitters, if you remember. So that's the analogy, the high-level concept that we're using to describe the project so that everyone is on the same page. Now, of course, that's not the only way to do it. We could be using DMAIC. And DMAIC is from Six Sigma, if you remember. So we could use this to initiate our project as well with a predefined checklist. So we want to narrow down the problem, and we want to include a project charter here. So what's the gap from where we are to where we want to be? And that's going to look like a few of these documents here, a business case and everything, and a little description. Then we want to define the problem, and we can do that with flowcharts, SIPOCs, value stream maps, critical to qualities or CTQs, or line graphs, or a gap analysis as we define the problem. Here's a value stream map of how everything goes. And then we want to measure the current state. So we can use check sheets or tally sheets. How many customers have we got? What's the addressable market? Any benchmarking data from our benchmarking things that we have seen before, and there we go, some nice data appears. Then we want to analyze all of that data. We can do that with Pareto charts, histograms. And again, if you don't know these things, we'll be covering them later, but this is a good thing that you do need to know for your PMP exam. Affinity diagrams, the 5 whys, control charts, or regression analysis, root cause analysis with a fishbone diagram, And that's what those will look like. They're pretty cool. And then we want to improve it. So once we've analyzed it, we can approve it. This is where we're actually implementing our project. And lastly, once we've implemented, we want to see if it's under control. We can use control charts, risk diagrams. So failure mode effects analysis is basically a risk register or a risk matrix, and the standard operating procedures to lock in those changes. So that's what a basic DMAIC or Six Sigma project will look like. Pretty cool. And so that can act as a project charter for you as well. And the last way, so just another version of a project charter, could be our plan, do, check, act. And this is from Lean. So with Lean, the Shewhart cycle or the Deming cycle, as we recall, we start with our problem statement. What's the gap from where we are to where we want to be? And we really want to base this on the customer-driven metrics of quality, delivery, and cost. So are we reducing defects? Are we increasing quality or delivery speed? Or are we reducing the cost? Now, notice that all the best businesses in the world do these things. Amazon, for example, delivered things quickly, fast delivery at a low cost. So they had that and they ended up obliterating their competitors. Just something to think about. That's what that's going to look like with our project charter. And then, of course, we want to grasp the current situation. Go to where the work is done, figure out what's happening. Again, use our Pareto charts or value stream maps. Then we're going to plan out our response, and that's what that is going to look like. Then we're going to perform the response and do our project. For our case, we're going to create the Pet Buddy mobile app, and we'll control that with a Kanban board or a Gantt chart schedule as we're going along. Then we're wanting to gather data to see if it worked. Again, use a histogram and other measures. And if it hasn't worked, then we can adjust. If it has worked, we'll lock it in with a standard operating procedure or SOP. And lastly, we want to look at some lessons learned to see if we got the information that we wanted. Now that we have our stakeholders and we've initiated our project with all of those wonderful tools, we're going to gather and elicit their requirements and turn them into our project scope. We're going to go through 14 tools in scope. There are a lot of tools that we're going to use in scope management for our project. Let's get started. The first one we'll do is just a Swimlane flowchart, and that's because this is the easiest to see and the easiest to understand. It's also my favorite because what we're trying to do is just figure out what the customer journey is, how the customer flows from the time that they order to the time where their order is delivered. And it's a nice simple way to do it. We have the different areas, or this could be anything. It could be the different parts of our mobile app. It could be the different parts of the business that we're working in. For example, marketing or customer service or the actual doggy daycare area itself. But our customer starts here and they might download the app, go through that process. With a Swimlane flowchart, you've got lots of different icons. For example, a decision point is a diamond and you might have yes or no or this way or that way. For example, over here, we've got with different logins or social logins. And then we've also got databases and systems. So there's a few different icons that you can use, but typically it's just a box for a normal process step by step, how are we going through the process, and then a diamond for decision points so that we might go in a few different directions. A simple process flowchart is very similar, and that can have swim lanes as well, as we can see, but again, it's just mostly the diamonds and mostly the process steps, which could also look like a top-down flowchart, going from the top to the bottom. It just depends on how you want to visualize it. There's no right or wrong way, as long as everyone can understand how the customer is flowing and why we're going to be making decisions in the future. We can see the pain points that our customer might be experiencing. Now, in the Toyota production system, or Lean, which came before Agile, so it's part of the Agile methodology, they used to use a value stream map. So this is basically a process flowchart as well. And what we're doing here is it starts in the top right. We have our customer order. They order the item. In this case, they might need their pet to stay somewhere, or they might need a carer to look after their pet, which is what we're trying to create with the Pet Buddy mobile app. So they create their order, and then the supplier, which in this case will be the Project Buddy app, creates what they need to create. With that, we just show the process steps that happens as well. There's many different icons in a value stream map. For example, this one is a queue. If it's waiting, this is a system or database again. We might have a messaging system or communication tools. But the real power with a value stream map is down the bottom here, is with these peaks and troughs. And I might just increase it a little bit so you can see. But the peaks and troughs, on the peaks, that is calling out any non-value added time. Non-value added time is any time that doesn't directly add value to the customer. So for example here, it's a queue, it's waiting. So we're spending time waiting. It's not directly adding time value to our customer. But here, we're setting up the profile for our customer, and that's the time that it takes to do that. We call that out in the valleys. That's value added time. It's directly helping the customer to get what they want on their customer journey. So as you can see, we've got our process steps in our value stream map and a few different icons. This one is a pull icon, so they pull the work towards them, which is an agile concept you should be coming to be familiar with. There's a supermarket, similar to a supermarket item is how it was named. You can pull them off the shelf if there's a small bit of inventory there. Lots of different things, many different icons, too many to go through in a small video, but the main idea is the value added and non-value added time. And then at the end, it is delivered. That's our delivery truck, but it could be any type of delivery, could be digital. That goes back to our customer. And then it goes around in circles again because our customer will order again, go through the process, and we just want to make sure we reduce that non-value added time as much as possible. Another type of map or customer journey map that we're going to use as we're figuring out what the current situation is and what our scope is going to look like. Again, business analysts, these are very big business analyst tools that our business analysts can use to figure out the customer journey, is a customer journey map. And this one is really wonderful because it gives us the customer journey in steps, the same as everything else, step by step. What do? They download the app, set up their profile, match the sitter based on location and availability. They view the sitter profiles and reviews. They select their sitter and then go through that process. But as they're going through that process, what is their experience? How do they feel? So at the beginning, they've got a comment here. It's nice and easy to use. And these are just the general customer comments that we're seeing. Maybe it's from customer reviews or customer feedback or focus groups. And what are our customers saying when they're happy in this first step? Second step, it's getting a little bit less, out of 10, not too satisfied. And by the third step, it's very dissatisfied in general for our customers. So these are good things for us to look for pain points to address so that we can create scope to address these things and improve our product. There are two other things in a customer journey map. One is our customer persona. And so we've got our ideal customer or the general type of customer that we have. This is an example and a description of that customer. Just in general, so Michelle is a mother of two who has 2 dogs. She needs somewhere to keep her dogs safe while she travels overseas on holiday. And here's an example of what Michelle might look like as our typical customer. What are her expectations? She wants it to be easy to find and match pet owners to pet sitters quickly, safely and easily. And here are the overall steps. So when we're onboarding, these are the steps that we're going through. When we're searching, these are the steps that we're going through. When we're booking, and the stay and communication and the completion and review. So the customer journey map is a really great way to figure out the customer journey and see the pain points and figure out what scope we might need from there. Our next one in figuring out the customer process or the process for our mobile app as it flows through in the customer journey is a SIPOC, which stands for Supplier, Input, Process Step, Output, and Customer. When we're saying supplier and customer, it's for the actual process step itself. So we usually outline the process first, step by step. How is the customer going? For example, they create their profile, the pet owner searches for a pet sitter, they book and pay, then the pet stays and the pet sitter communicates with the owner, and lastly at the end the pet is picked up and the process is reviewed. And ideally if they do it again, they'll go through that whole process again. Just a nice simple way to see it. But for each of these process steps, they have an output. So the output is the customer profile up here. and who receives the benefit of that output. That's the customer of that process. So it's not the overall customer, although it can be, but the customer is whoever receives the output of that particular process. Likewise, the supplier of that process is whoever provides the input for that process step. So now you can see that even though we've got our process steps from top to bottom, each of those process steps has a supplier and an input, so what they need to create that process step, the process step itself, the output of that process, and then who receives the benefit of that process step. And then we get a really beautiful map of all of those inputs and outputs and what we need to do to get that process done. And that is our SIPOC, a really, really nice way to do it. Now, as we move on with our scope, we don't want to just map out the customer journey. We also need to map out and make visible these systems and the systems that we're working with and how the system interacts or how we want it to interact. For example, one way is with a unified modeling language, sequence diagram, which is basically just the sequence that the information flows. We've got our customer at the beginning again. So you're seeing a theme here. It usually starts with the customer and goes through a system or a process of some sort. And it goes from left to right and top to bottom on our sequence diagram. So our example here is our customer enters their details into the mobile app home. And you can see we're describing different parts of the system here that the information might flow through, or even different systems that interact together. So this is where we start to look into more of the technical side of things. It goes into the customer database, their name and details, and then they process the payment with the payment system. So this could be part of the overall system or a different system itself that's connected. Then that information goes back to a message to the customer. So you can see how it flows. These blocks or these rectangles are how long this particular part of the system is active for. So as you can see, it needs to be active for all of these things to go through for that entire time. But for the payment system, it's only active for the time that we're making that payment. So it's a short amount of time. And that's a really nice way to see how our system interacts. Another part of our system, or to map out our system, is a context diagram. And so this is where we're starting to delve into the architecture. So again, figuring out the solutions, figuring out the requirements, putting those together, that's going to create the scope for our project. But here is our context diagram, or a data flow diagram. This again shows the different systems and how the information flows through those systems. For example, we've got our Pet Buddy mobile app in the center here, interacting with different systems and different parts of the system. So our payment system over here with our payment details approved, going back to our customer database, and information from social networks if we're adding details through social media, with customer preferences going back into our customer database again. Lots of different ways. This is our little architecture diagram for the system, and it could be small or it could be huge. I have seen and worked with some context diagrams. You might have pictures of the different systems in here just as a nice representation, and then they look really nice. I've seen some massive architecture documents with lots of interacting systems, but this is a much easier way to display it, and now we can see it, everyone's on the same page. All right, now we've visualized our process, we've visualized our system, now it's time for our team to come together and brainstorm ideas to meet our customer requirements. And we're going to do a few different things here. There's many different ways to do it. Just general brainstorming, but putting them into buckets. So grouping them together in similar ideas. So what we're going to do with our team is just write down all of the ideas that will meet the requirements that we need within the system that we're working with. So we've got our system design and our customer process. And here are all the ideas that our team are going to come up with. But we want to group them into different buckets. So we've got all of the user profile ideas, all of the search and matchmaking ideas, all of the booking and scheduling ideas, payment processing, ratings and reviews. So the team comes up with lots of different ideas, but we can group them together in those different buckets. That's affinity brainstorming. Now, we could also show that in an affinity diagram because we're grouping things with an affinity to each other. They're similar to each other. And this is a really nice way to visualize it. This is our affinity diagram. As you can see, here are the ideas that our team have come up with. All of the ones that are around booking and scheduling, all of the ones that are around user profiles, search or payment processing, and any other buckets that we want to group our brainstormed ideas together with. One of the great ways that we can do brainstorming is the nominal group technique. Remember, the nominal group technique is anonymous. So typically we write down the ideas. So the team will write down their ideas on the left here or all together, and then they'll reveal them at the same time. So that way we're not influenced by our manager or by the highest paid person or even the loudest person in the room. We all get to have a proper say. So that's one of the benefits of the nominal group technique. Another way to visualize this and to break it all down is a mind map. So we're going to see mind maps when we're dealing with scope and when our business analysts are breaking down things and creating scope for our project. We've got our Pet Buddy mobile app, and this just is a way to decompose the idea. So we get our main idea in the center, then the next smaller idea, which is our search algorithm, and then all of the ideas underneath search and matchmaking. So here are all the brainstormed ideas that our team came up with within the bucket of search and matchmaking. And the same thing for ratings and reviews. And we can break it down even further if we want to, but this is just a really nice way to visualize it again using that mind map idea. And now we've got a whole bunch of ideas for scope, and we've got the requirements that we came up with originally. Now it is time for us to put together one of the most important documents on our project, and that's the requirements traceability matrix. It traces the requirement that we originally had, that we figured out, and how that matches up to the scope that we're delivering. So for example, these requirements on the left, our customer wants to allow pet owners to create and manage their personal details and to get their pet details as well. How are they going to do that? This is the scope item that we're going to deliver is through user profiles. So that's one of our features. And then we've got user stories or smaller user stories within that feature. And that's our pet owner profiles. It might be a user story if we're working with Agile, or a work package if we're working on a normal project. We're going to have the different IDs, so we want it to be tested as well. We want our test case ID, who it's assigned to, and where it currently is. So now we can see the customer requirement, how we're meeting that with the scope, and is it being quality tested, and then is it finished or is it in progress? We're tracing it from start to finish, from the requirement all the way through to done. We can also break that down once we've got that in our work breakdown structure, which is just another way to decompose the item. As you can see, we've got our Pet Buddy app. It's similar to our mind map in this way. We break it down into the next highest level items, user profiles. These are our deliverables or our features, our booking and scheduling. And then under that, these are our work packages and our user stories. And you could break it down even further again if you really needed to. And then the last one for scope, before we get to prioritization, is our work breakdown structure dictionary, or WBS Dictionary. So this is like our work breakdown structure, but it adds all of the extra information that we need about each particular item. So this is really the heart of our project in this WBS dictionary. It goes from our feature, as you can see here, with a unique ID, and then the different work packages or user stories that we've got here. The description of these, it gives the description of what we're delivering, who we need to create it, the duration, so our scheduled duration, the costs to create that particular item, the current status, and then our quality acceptance criteria. And we've got this as our user story type acceptance criteria. As a pet owner, I want to create a profile for my pet so that potential sitters can learn about my pet's personality, needs, and preferences. And that's how we're going to meet that quality criteria for that user story or work package. Who it's assigned to, the start date and the finish date. And now putting all of those things together, we've got a wonderful visual idea, and all of that information has been pulled out of our heads into a visual map of our system, a visual map of our customer process, and a visual display of all of the scope and requirements that we need to meet our customer requirements for this project to have success. And now that we've done that, we need to look at which of those items are most important to our stakeholders. We need to prioritize them. Here are the 6 prioritization tools that we're going to go through. This is going to be a whole bunch of fun. As always, let's get straight into the first one. And that is our prioritization matrix. As you can see from our scope, we've got all of our features that we're wanting to deliver, and we're going to rank these by 2 different ways, or you could add a different way if you preferred, but cost over benefit. So what's the cost of the item to create, and what's the benefit that we're going to get from it? And we're just going to rank these from 1 to 10. So a high benefit or value, or a high cost or effort. And once we've done that, it goes on this beautiful little matrix. And as you can see, we can use that to prioritize. If we've got a high cost over here, but a low benefit, then it means we probably are not going to want to prioritize that very highly. However, if we've got a high benefit over here, and we've also got a low cost or a low effort, then these are the ones that we really want to focus on first. We're going to get the biggest bang for our buck to do these ones, and it's going to be a little bit faster than doing the high effort or the high cost items. We can use the same idea with our prioritization matrix with Moscow. So Moscow is must have, should have, MSCW. So could have and won't have or will not have. And all we're doing here is just prioritizing these into a quadrant. So our quadrant of won't have, which is high cost and low benefit. But high benefit and low cost, we must have those items. And then in between there is our should have and could have items. So this is a great way to prioritize what we're going to do first. If you don't want to do it with actual numbers or ranking from 1 to 10, we can actually just ask our stakeholders using Moscow again. So with our stakeholders, we'll say which features must we have, which features should we have, which features could we have, and which features won't we have. And it's just from top to bottom ranking, basically the highest priority to the lowest priority. And we can put those on our Moscow chart. User profiles, we just put a must have. Over here, we've got dog sitting add-ons, won't have, could have, booking and scheduling, or whichever ones we're going to prioritize in whichever way as we ask our stakeholders. One tip here in the real world when you're doing this, if you're asking your stakeholders, what are they going to say? They're going to say that everything is a must-have. And so this happens all the time. What you can do in that situation is just have 5 for each bucket, or you can divide them into 4. So however many for each particular bucket. We say to our stakeholders, okay, we can only have 5 must-haves, 5 should-haves, 5 could-haves, and 5 won't-haves. So if we've got too many must-haves, we're going to have to bump some of them back. And that's a really nice way to do it, a nice low conflict, easy for everyone to understand. On our project, we can have trade-off sliders as well. So that's what is the most fixed on our project? Are we going for time? We absolutely must meet our schedule. But most flexible, maybe we can change our scope if we want to, if we're working on an agile project, but we can change this. It's a nice way to look at our project overall. Now, a similar idea that we're going to come across when we're prioritizing is Kano Analysis. And Kano Analysis just puts 3 different buckets, and that is our must-have quality, our satisfying quality, and our delighting quality. And the way Kano Analysis works is this: it's the satisfaction level of the feature. So how satisfying is it to our customers from 1 to 10? But then where is that item within its product life cycle? So is it very, very new, or has it been around for quite some time? And that's how Kano Analysis works, because over time, we become used to these features and they become less delightful. For example, electric windows in your car in the 80s and 90s, that was an absolute delighter. It was a fantastic invention. But now, over time, because it's at the end of its life cycle, really, if you don't have electric windows in your car, then you probably won't even consider that car to begin with. So using that, we can rank our features and have must-haves, satisfying features, and then features that are delightful to our customers. Those ones we may not need to do until we've met our must-haves and our satisfying quality for Kano Analysis. Another great way to prioritize, and this is one of my favorites, especially when you've got complex situations and lots of stakeholders involved, multi-criteria decision chart. This is where we have our features that we're trying to prioritize up the top, and down the side, we've got the criteria that we can decide on that we want to rank them by. And we just rank them from 1 to 5, or 0 to 5 especially as well. For example, our user profiles, we're ranking them here by customer satisfaction, ease of use, ease of solution. And when you've got lots of different stakeholders with competing needs, this is very useful because we can put all of their different competing needs into this criteria that we choose. And then we rank them from 1 to 5. And then at the end, we've got a nice average, or it could be the total. You can choose which one. I prefer the average. But now we can see the highest ones. That's a really great way to prioritize. And there's a few other ways just to finish off prioritization. We can do simple voting with our stakeholders. And we could vote with monopoly money, or voting with dots, or voting with points. It doesn't matter what we call it. It's multi-voting. You might have 10 votes, or you might have 100 points to distribute across all of the scope. And you might put all of your 100 points on one item to really try and get it across the line. Or you might distribute it with 10 per scope item that you really want. So that's multi-voting is a nice way to do it. Of course, you can have unanimous votes, the majority, which is just more than 50%, or just the largest block, which is plurality. But that's more for, now we're just starting to get into project management education here. It's not really a tool, but one of the tools that you will come across, the last one that we have, is the cost of delay. This one is where we look at the expected weekly profit once the item is delivered. And this is a hypothesis. We never know this for sure, but we have an idea. So we say, okay, user profiles is going to give us a high weekly profit. And the duration to deliver it is going to take 2 weeks. So we take 6,500 divided by 2, and that gives us our cost of delay, also called CD3. And then we simply prioritize this from highest to lowest. Really, really simple. This is a great way to do it because it sort of is like the cost to benefit as well. This is our effort, and this is our benefit, or value over effort, for example, and then we just rank them from the highest to lowest. So the cost of delay can work really, really well, and those are all the ways that we can prioritize the scope on our project as we're creating our Pet Buddy mobile app. And now that we've done that, we need to look at when we can deliver those items by putting them together on our project schedule. What we're going to look at now is 4 of the main schedule tools. Let's get straight into the first one. Now remember, we've got all of our scope, and this is our scope in the Work Breakdown Structure Dictionary, and our main features over on the left-hand side. This is important because we're going to put these together on a schedule network diagram, and all this does is shows the order that we want to deliver things in. And then once we estimate these durations, it can also show us the critical path. Now, the example here is we've got all of our features just in order, in the order that we want to deliver those things in, or that we have to deliver things in if they've got dependencies on other items. Now, in the middle here, these are our durations. So 5 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to deliver these things, for example. And then as we go through the forward and the backward pass, we can figure out our critical path. The path with the least wiggle room, or the least float, or the least slack is our critical path, because we can't really move anything on that critical path without moving the entire schedule. So this is a pretty cool diagram, and it's a pretty cool thing to do on your project, because one, it figures out the order that we want to deliver things in, and 2, it determines our critical path. So this path, we really can't move things on without it affecting our entire schedule. A much more simple version, or just our overall project schedule, is usually done on a Gantt chart. It could just be a project schedule. It could be done in any way, but a Gantt chart is probably the most common way that you'll see. You've got the items, the calendar up the top here, and then the items that we're going to deliver, and our start and end dates. And then it just shows us when these items are going to be delivered on the calendar. So it's a really nice visual. A Gantt chart is a fantastic way to show our project schedule. And you can do it on a weekly basis, which that one was, or a daily basis. This is just a version in Excel that I've created. And as you can see on our daily chart, then it shows when we're going to be finished based on all of those things put together. Now, once we've got the durations, and for each of these particular items, we want to estimate these durations with our team. So how long does our team think it's going to take? We can add those durations back into our work breakdown structure dictionary, which, if you remember, is basically like a database of all of the information on our project. So we've got the feature, the work package, the description, the resources that we need, the duration, quality acceptance criteria, and everything there. So now that we've got the durations, we can put them back into the WBS Dictionary. Now, as we move along with our project, we may work in sprints, or we may visualize our work on a Kanban board. This is a schedule in a way as well. It's not like a Gantt chart, but if we've got a 2-week sprint, and these are the features that we want to deliver during that sprint, we can visualize this on a Kanban board with our cards as the features that we're going to deliver. And as everyone works on them, now these ones are in development, these ones are in analysis, these ones are in test. It's just been completed and it moves into sign off. And as they move along, then we want to complete them and get them into done so that we can release them into the main branch of the system. And this is just a really great way to visualize that work on a shorter term basis in that 2-week sprint or 2-week iteration. Another tool that we can use that is primarily an agile tool is our sprint burndown chart, which looks like this. What this is all of the initial estimates for the items that we're looking to complete in the sprint or the iteration of 2 weeks, or however long our iteration is. Usually it's 2 weeks. So we've got our initial estimates there, and then as they get completed, here they are being completed over the 10-day sprint or the 2-week sprint. Now this is what it looks like. This is our ideal trend. This is, in an ideal world, this is how it would look. Now this one is a funny one. Look at this, it goes back up. And that is either, when that happens, we've got either another card being added into the sprint, or we've actually re-estimated during the sprint. So both of those are not very good practice. We really don't want to do that. But again, in the real world, nothing's perfect. We may have to do these things sometimes. So in this case, we just had to add a bit of extra effort. The dog sitter profiles took way longer than we expected. And so they've added the extra effort to that card and then ultimately completed it still. But that's why it looks like that. But it could look like that if we've added an extra card to the iteration or the sprint as well. And that's our sprint burndown chart. And now, all in all, we have a great visual idea of when our project is going to be completed, and we can clearly see if we're on track or off track using these schedule tools. Now it's time to look at the project cost and what we need to budget to complete our project. There are 4 tools you need to know to manage cost on your project. Can you name all of them? We've got our project budget here, but the first thing we're going to do is go back to our work breakdown structure dictionary. Remember, this is where we have all of our scope, and it's really a nice database of all of our scope and project information. We recently, for our schedule, just put the duration estimates for each of these items. And now with our team, we're also going to estimate the cost of each of these items. So here we are here. We can go through and estimate these with the team and then put these back into our work breakdown structure dictionary. So now we know for each item how much we estimate that these are going to cost. Just a brief note while we're here on commercial databases, to estimate these things, we could go to existing commercial databases. This would be places that have information on what we're trying to deliver to give us an idea of how much it might cost. Now, this is going to vary depending on the industry that you're in. If you're in construction, you might have some pretty clear commercial databases that give you a really nice idea of what the cost is going to be, and it can get pretty close. Or the same thing in software, we might have existing ideas on how much these things will cost. So we can estimate these with our team, but we can also get additional data from any of these databases that exist out there in the real world. We don't just have to put this in our work breakdown structure dictionary, we can also add these items or add the cost items to our work breakdown structure. If you want to visualize it like this, now we can do our bottom-up estimating, which is where we have all of the small items like work packages or user stories, and then we add them all together to get the cost for the feature, and then we add all the features together to get the cost for our project. So we're gradually aggregating all of those costs to get the overall cost. Now, once we've done that, we can put that together on our budget. So with our budget, as you can see, we've got our items down the left-hand side here, and then we've got how much we budgeted for these particular items. As we go along on our project, we're going to either spend more or less, and we can see here in red we've spent more, and in green we've spent less. So it does that automatically, which is really, really nice. And then at the end, for our total, and I'll just bring this in a little bit, there we go, that's a bit nicer. We can see as well if we've spent more for that particular feature, which is red, or less, which is green. So what we've budgeted versus what we've actually spent. And when we put that together, we can actually put that together on a nice chart so we can see how we are tracking. This is our actual cost in green, and what we've budgeted, our planned value, is in orange. That's our ideal trend. So over the course of the Pet Buddy mobile app, we have spent a tiny bit more, not too much more, which is nice, but this is something that we'll have to manage as project managers. Now the last thing is, or two things, our approved project budget will include contingency reserves and management reserves. Now in the real world, you may not have the benefit of these. Sometimes projects just don't include them, but what we're going to use here is contingency reserves for any known risks. We've got our estimates for the main features, and on our project, we've got a contingency reserve for any known risks, which we're going to add for $35,000. We've also got a management reserve for any unforeseen scope or project changes that will be approved that we need to do, and that's $80,000. Now, we don't get that money automatically, but it will go into our overall project budget, making it $880,000. But what we're going to do is have periodic funding requirements. So for our contingency reserve and management reserve, that will need to be approved and only used as required. So hopefully we don't have to use these two things, but if we do, we've got the milestone requirement or the funding requirement here outlined in our plan. So for our contingency reserve, the risk response has to be approved by our business owner, Samantha Young, and the management reserve, any changed or additional scope outside the project budget has to be approved by our project sponsor, Samantha Young, as well. And then we have other periodic funding. So we start out with $200,000 and we get more funding just as long as the project is working. If it's not, then it may be cut off. So we do need to see consistent releases coming through over the project lifecycle. And here's what that's going to look like just on a milestone chart. We start off with our initial $200,000 to get the ball rolling. And as we're delivering and as the project is progressing along, and if we see sufficient progress, then we've got release 1, 2, 3, 4, and ultimately the project to be completed and released at the end. And those are 4 and maybe a bit more of our cost tools that we're going to see on our project and in the PMBOK guide, which leads us into how we manage quality on our project and the tools we'll use to deliver on our customer requirements. Here are 7 things we're going to go through. How many of these can you guess before we get there? Let's find out, starting with our test and inspection plan, or test and evaluation documents that we have here. So this is where we're outlining our test approach. We have Macy, our test lead, and Jack, our tester, and we're going to be outlining what we're testing, so the test or acceptance criteria, the deliverable that we're testing, and whether it passes or fails that test or acceptance criteria, usually called ACs or acceptance criteria. Here we've done our acceptance criteria just as a I want so I can. That's a typical user story method. You might use many other methods, just a step-by-step to reproduce any issues, or step-by-step to test the item. Once they've tested these items, they can put all of the outcomes in the test and evaluation documents and some screenshots if things go wrong, and the steps to reproduce any issues that happen. Now, of course, we're going to put the acceptance criteria in our trusty work breakdown structure dictionary as well. Remember that work breakdown structure dictionary, we've come back to it every single time. These are attributes that we're adding from our project into each of the items of our scope. So it goes from all the way to the left to the right, duration, cost, and resources for each particular item of scope, and now the quality needs as well. So we're adding that acceptance criteria and who it's currently assigned to back into our work breakdown structure dictionary as attributes. Now, as we get started with testing these things as they're developed, we can start first of all with a control chart to see if our process or our app or the things that we're measuring are in control. This particular example is the Pet Buddy bookings versus cancellations. And if we've got more bookings, then it's in positive territory. And if we've got more cancellations, then it goes into negative territory. And as you can see, it's just a simple line chart at its most basic. But the real key here is having an average. So this is the average of all of the data. And that ends up being right in the middle. And then we have upper control limits and lower control limits. Now, traditionally on a control chart, that is 3 times the standard deviation of all our data. And you can do that very simply just with a standard deviation formula that you can see here. So we can easily get the standard deviation. And again, traditionally, that is 3 times away from the average. But what I've done here is just made it 1 times away from the average, because what I actually find in the real world is 3 times is too much. So it ends up being way outside, and it's never out of control, basically. So as you can see here, we've got, it starts getting a little bit too much. We might not be able to keep up here. And down here, if we're canceling too many, then we really need to figure out why our process is also out of control. And so we need to look into that. As Macy and Jack go through their testing process, they're also going to find defects. And what they're going to do here is just take a tally sheet or a check sheet of all of the defects that they find. And what that looks like is here we've got some defects like booking failures, display issues, the app might freeze here or there. And they're just going to put these, check them every time it happens. And so as you can see, some of them happen more than others. But what we can do then is start to look at which one is happening the most. It's our check sheet. And now we get a good idea of where we really need to focus our efforts, because as you can see here, sitter availability mismatch is occurring the most. It's probably going to cause the most issues for us. So this is a simple check sheet, a nice way to count defects. Now, a more advanced version of a check sheet is a Pareto chart. And with a Pareto chart, it's the same thing. We're counting those defects down the side here, as you can see. But the real magic here is that we're then sorting them from largest to smallest. So on our Pareto chart with our Pet Buddy defects, where we've got the highest on the left here, so we know which one that we want to focus on. Over on the right-hand side is a cumulative percentage. So all of these are added up as a percentage until it gets to 100% all the way at the end. The key with the Pareto chart is it's based on the Pareto principle, which is that 80% of the outcomes happen from 20% of the inputs. And it happens everywhere throughout life. So 20% of the people own 80% of the wealth. 20% of our workers do 80% of the work. I don't know if you've ever experienced that in a project team. And 20% of our defects cause 80% of the overall issues. And so that's what we're looking at here. We've got our 80% line, and we can see where these two things intersect. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are our top 5 defects. So that's causing 80% of the issues. Now, it doesn't have to be 80%. It's an arbitrary number, but the point is that a small amount of the inputs cause a large amount of the outputs or the issues or the things that we're looking at. So if we were to make that lower and make it down to 60%, then we could focus on the top 3 defects or the top 4 defects. And those would be the ones that we would prioritize and work on first. Now, once we've found those defects, and once Macy and Jack have found those defects and prioritized which ones they want to work on first, then we can do some root cause analysis on those defects to figure out the real cause of those problems. And what we've got here is an Ishikawa diagram, also known as a Fishbone diagram or just a root cause analysis chart. But this one is for the root cause analysis of the mismatch in sitter availability. So if a sitter says that they're available, but then they're actually not, and there's a mismatch there, that's our problem or opportunity. And we note that in the head of the fish. So as you can see, this looks a bit like a fishbone. There's another way to look at it. It could be as a diagram, as you've got here. So this one looks more like a fish, so that's a little bit nicer. But that's another way to look at it. This one's nice because it does all of the calculations for us already in the cells of Excel, so that's pretty cool. Now with this, then we come up with reasons why this defect happens, and we do them in the brainstorming buckets of people issues, information issues, process issues, and system issues. And it's just a nice way to group any brainstormed ideas for the root cause of sitter availability mismatch. And then once we've done that, another way to do root cause analysis in our project is the 5 whys, where we have our issue or our defect. In this case, it's glitches in the booking logic that we're looking at. And we simply ask, why is it happening? And we ask why until we get to the real cause of the issue. Now, the reason why we keep asking why is because usually the first answer might be a symptom or one of the reasons, but it's not the final reason that an issue is happening. We're wanting to dig deeper and dig deeper until we really figure out the core reason why this is happening. And this is what it looks like here. So glitches in the booking logic. Why did it happen? Because it allows 2 pet owners to book at the same sitter for overlapping time slots. So that's not very good. But is that the root cause? No. Until we get to the answer of the booking system doesn't implement proper concurrency control, which is something that we actually could implement in this particular mobile app. So if we do that, is that going to solve the real root cause of the problem? And the answer is yes. So once we've figured out the root cause, we can take some actions. And then we know Macy and Jack have done a wonderful job in quality for this mobile app, Pet Buddy. As we go along on our project, we're going to need to manage the people in our team and any other resources we need to complete our project. We've got 4 tools to manage resources on our project that you absolutely must know. We're going to show you what they look like and how to use them. And the first one we're going to start with is our RACI, which stands for responsible. Who is responsible? Who's accountable, or who needs to sign off on a task, who is consulted, or who provides their expert judgment, or who is kept informed on the project. And Billy, our project manager, is going through this with the team to make sure that everyone is really clear on their roles and responsibilities throughout the project. And what this one looks like for Pet Buddy is we've got all of our roles down the left-hand side. We've got project sponsor, project manager, our business analysts, senior user, developers and testers, and some subject matter experts here as well. And then up the top, we have all of the deliverables or things that our team might be responsible for. For example, the project plan, Billy is responsible for creating that project plan. But the source code, we've got our developers. Max, our senior developer, is accountable. He needs to sign off and do a shoulder check of the code. But Olivia, Liam, and Isla, who are our developers, are responsible for the source code itself. So this is a great way. Now everyone is really clear on what they need to do throughout the Pet Buddy project. And what Billy's going to do next is get everyone together and agree on the team's ways of working in a team charter. The team charter outlines a whole bunch of things, and we start with the background of the project. Why are we doing it? What's the overall mission of the project? Samantha wants this mobile application that matches pet sitters to pet owners so she can expand her business and create the Uber for pet stays. We've got our team roles with the project sponsor, project manager, business analysts, any stakeholders we're going to be working with, and then it gets into our ways of working. So our team values. What do we care about when it comes to our team? Do we want always to be on time? Should we never miss a stand-up no matter what? Should we always be available for requirements checking or for code inspections or whatever that looks like, whatever our team cares about for our team values? And that can change amongst different teams. The team communication, we're going to be co-located. So ideally, we're just going to work together, but that could be over messaging software. It could be video communication, of teleconferencing, or all of those sorts of things if we need it. The decision process, who makes the scope decisions, who makes ways of working and adjustments, who makes estimates on their work, and any conflict processes. What do we do if we can't agree? And then we've got our team ceremonies. When are they happening and what do we need to do? And we'll also include our definition of ready. So when an item is ready to be worked on, it has acceptance criteria. It's been checked by the product owner, for example. And the definition of done, so when an item has been developed and tested and it's passed and signed off by the product owner again. So all of that comes together to make it really clear that we know how we're going to be working on the Pet Buddy app. Now, one thing we can add in here, this one's not in the PMBOK guide, but this is one that I like to do, and it is just to get together and see if we can figure out the regular meeting cadence. Now, obviously, don't have a lot of meetings if you can help it. We want to be focused on the work. And really, we only want meetings to confirm something that absolutely needs to be confirmed face-to-face or together. So in many of the Agile teams I've worked in, we'll have user story elaboration, usually twice a week, and then just ad hoc any other times that we need to get more details on the acceptance criteria for the scope that we're working on. But in the morning, we could have a daily stand-up, or if it's better suited, we could have it in the afternoon. So this is just a great way. We can move these around and we can get everyone together and say, what's the best time that the team can meet? Do we have other commitments, or are there time zone differences that we need to be aware of? And let's arrange these regular meetings. And then lastly, as we've been working together in a team for some time, we're going to go through a retrospective. A retrospective is an agile term or an agile idea where we meet at the end of our iteration. Usually an iteration is 2 weeks where we've delivered a small item to the customer so they can see it and give their feedback. And then a retrospective is for us to improve our ways of working as a team. So our whole project team is going to get together. We've got probably not Samantha, the project sponsor, but probably everyone else who's actually working within the project. Developers, business analysts, testers, and Billy, our project manager, could potentially run this as well. And what we're going to ask are 4 questions. What went well during the sprint? So maybe we communicated clearly, maybe we got everything done that we needed to get done. But then we've got challenges. What could be improved? Maybe some of the items were not fully elaborated or scoped, causing a bit of last-minute scrambling. Then lessons, what have we learned? The initial task estimations were off. Maybe we need to figure out a better way to estimate, things like that. What are we going to learn going forward? And is there anything that still puzzles us? Maybe our team is unsure how the app is going to be received by a wider user base. And so the product owner could give some clarification there or some ideas. But here we can raise those questions, and again, in a safe environment, and take all of these things, the improvements, even the successes, and take some actions and say, how are we going to improve these for next time as we're going through our project? And as we improve little by little, we become an amazing high-performing team. And those are all the resource documents and resource tools that you'll come across in your project. Now it's time to find and manage any risks on our project. Here are 7 of the most important risk management tools. How many of these can you name already? Let's start with the main one and the most important one, which is our risk assessment matrix. And what we're usually doing here is brainstorming risks with our project team. Remember, a risk is something that could impact us in the future. It hasn't happened yet, so we're planning for the future. And as we plan, we look at the probability that something is going to happen and the impact when it does happen. Now, in this risk matrix, I've put them from very low to very high, so 5 items here, but you could rate them from 1 to 5 as well. Typically, you then take those numbers, so 1 to 5 and 1 to 5, and you multiply them together to give you your overall risk rating. But in this case, I've put them as words just because it's a little bit nicer. And then we put a control, so we try and control that risk and say what we're going to do to mitigate that risk. And once we do that, usually the overall risk is going to be lower. It might reduce the impact, or it might reduce the probability of that risk from happening. And then we've got a better situation if we have that control in place. And a risk matrix typically looks like this. As you can see, before the controls, we've got lots of different risks. This is our matrix with medium and low, or medium and medium. Here are our critical risks over here with high probability and a high impact. And so we've got some critical risks that we really don't want to be left alone. We don't want these outstanding. So we put the controls in place that we've named over here. We might test different pricing strategies. We might ensure set of verification for our Pet Buddy mobile app. And once we have those controls, then it's starting to look a lot better. It brings them back under control. We've now got some sustainable risks and some moderate risks only, and nothing in our critical or severe. I absolutely love this risk assessment template, and it does all of that automatically for you once you input your brainstormed risks. And that's the most important place to start. Now, how do we brainstorm risks with our team? Well, there are a few ways, and the two most popular are SWOT analysis and PESTEL or PESTEL analysis, depending on how you want to show it. But SWOT is our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And typically our risks are going to come from our weaknesses in the project and threats from outside the project. For example, there might be major players externally who are already dominating the pet sitter market that we're trying to enter. Or there might be pet owners might cut back on services during a downturn. These are things external that we usually can't control that we might have to address. And our weaknesses, we might have a reliance on the business owner's personal brand, or we might have user trust concerns for pets because they're leaving their beloved pets with other pet sitters, and so we need to address those trust concerns. These are wonderful ways to brainstorm risks with our SWOT analysis. And a similar one is PESTEL or PESTEL, again, depending on how you want to arrange those letters, but that is political risks, environmental risks, social risks, technological risks, economic and legal risks. Now, these could be opportunities as well. Remember, risk doesn't have to be negative. It can be positive. It could be an opportunity if it hasn't happened yet and it's something in the future. But it's a positive risk, then it's an opportunity for us. So just remember that one. But some things we might come up with are AI-driven matchmaking, wearable pet tech. So our pets might have wearable tech that they can use and integrate with our mobile app. Zoning laws might impact us from a legal perspective. So lots of things that we need to be aware of that can now go into our risk assessment matrix. Now, once we've brainstormed all of our risks and we've come up with the qualitative measures like likelihood and impact that we saw before, now it's time to come up with some more quantitative measures of our risks. And that's where we're looking at actual data and actual numbers and simulations. And we're delving into these risks a little bit more deeply. One way to do this is with decision tree analysis, where we have our decision at the left-hand side here, and then we look at the costs for each decision and the probability of things happening as they go along. Now, as we continue along this journey with different probabilities and different costs or benefits, it gives us an outcome at the end. For example, as we expand, do we use aggressive paid marketing or do we use sponsorships and referrals? So these are our two options. One costs $500,000, the other one costs $200,000. Now, as we go along, we've got a 60% chance of strong demand, but for sponsorships, a 75% chance of strong demand. And the outcome here is a $200,000 benefit with a 45% chance. But the outcome for aggressive paid marketing is also a $200,000 outcome, but a 42% chance. So overall, it looks like our sponsorships and referrals might be the best decision path or decision tree for us to go down. And now we've gathered that data on the controls or the mitigations that we could put in place. Another way to analyze risks and opportunities is with a force field analysis. Here is our opportunity or our risk that we're looking at. In the middle, we're developing an AI-driven matchmaking algorithm. So that was one of the things in our PESTEL analysis that we were looking at. And the way force field analysis works is like this. We've got our decision in the middle and the forces for it on the left-hand side and the forces against it on the right-hand side. And then we rank them from 1 to 5. So how strong is that force? High development costs might be a very, very strong force against developing an AI-driven matchmaking algorithm. But algorithm bias and errors might just be a very small force. So down here. Now, once we have ranked these, both on the positive and on the negative side, then we need to add them together. For example, before I moved all of these around, we had 15 in total as forces against this change, but we had 14 in total for the change. So it looks like it's probably not going to be a great way going forward, or it's very close. We can look into that in a bit more detail, but ultimately the forces against it are stronger. That's a wonderful way to gather more data on our risks and opportunities. And lastly, another way that we can analyze these things is with sensitivity analysis or a tornado chart. For this sensitivity analysis, what we're looking at is how the commission per sit, so the commission that we're paying the pet sitters, how that changes the revenue overall. For example, if we have a 5% revenue share with our sitters, then it looks like we've got positive revenue over here of 320,000. 10% is also positive at 290,000. But as soon as we start getting up, so 15% revenue share, then it actually negatively impacts the overall revenue. People stop doing sits with us or they start using other apps. And then 20% is positive, 25% is negative. Now, this could go many different ways, and it's really up to the data that you collect. And this is just an example. But the idea is that this looks like a tornado in the end because we have some negative values and we have some positive values. We rank them from the highest to the lowest, whether it's positive or negative, and now it looks like a tornado. This could be many different things. This could be positive value that we're delivering in our team versus negative risks that we're trying to mitigate in our team, and again, ranking these to prioritize the highest value and the highest risks over the lowest value and the lowest risks. And this is the last great way to gather more data on our risks, and overall 6 wonderful tools that you're going to find in risk management on your project. And here we are, you made it through to the very end. We've been through 63 of the most essential project management tools. How many of those did you already know and how many did you learn? Now that you know these, you can definitely run any project better and find the success that you truly deserve. Keep going. I believe in you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.